Anyone that's come to the podcast studio and has sat down and had the conversation on the show has noticed the 7 foot by 7 foot podcast table that in the center around the whole table are 40 years plus worth of movie ticket stubs. And they're all from the times that I went to cinema. So I've got a special fondness and a love for cinema. I will never say streaming is better than cinema. I will always go to the theater more so than streaming. It's just who I am. You can call me old, I don't care. But it got me thinking, I have a history before construction that is connected to film, connected to production, connected to creativity and storytelling. That's why when people have heard of me sharing certain things that I've been doing, it has a lot to do with my creative background. So I thought, since there's been so much crap like regarding streaming and certain films that have been coming out lately, I'm just stunned how much crap there is out there. So I want to start talking about films from the past that people should consider watching. And one film in particular is 1981, Thief, starring James Caan, Tuesday Weld, Willie Nelson, Jim Belushi, Robert Prosky, and Dennis Farina. Like, you got to understand, this movie set the standard for robbery films. This set the tone of that cold-ass character that doesn't care about anything or anyone, he only cares about the score. Mann, he co-writes with Frank Hohimer this realistic story of the underbelly of high-stakes safe cracking. And the detail that he puts into the shooting and the character and all kinds of stuff is amazing. You've got to understand that this is 40 plus years. As with many of his stories, once the driven character breaks from his set of rules, that is when his life starts to unravel. He meets the girl, he gets seduced by the crime boss for bigger rewards, things start to fall apart, and then the character of Frank, beautifully played by James Caan, becomes reactive. Michael Mann loves architecture, and you can see it where his career, his style, and his influence was headed with that film. It was his second film to date. He had a limited filmography. I say limited because he didn't hammer out films the same way other directors did. He could have gone the TV route. He could have chose not to do so many films. He could have chose to do everything that was being thrown his way, but he chose not to. He wanted to invest creativity. He wanted to build worlds. He honestly, as if he wants to take you into this alternative version of Earth where these characters inhabit it. He uses sewers, office, cars, diners. He uses them as part of his filmmaking landscape. He understands that that backdrop is as important as the characters and what's going on between the characters, and that's how he wrote them. I know a lot of you younger viewers know Michael Mann from Heat. There's been a lot of traction on social media recently about Heat. Heat is a 1995 film. You can easily see Thief in Heat and vice versa. But you can always see other filmmakers being influenced by the world of Michael Mann. He creates these unique worlds. Christopher Nolan, he totally expressed that The Dark Knight was influenced by Heat. Keep in mind that Heat was made 6 years earlier, another version of that same story that Michael Mann directed, and it was titled LA Takedown. Mann tested his ideas for Heat with that TV feature film. That was going to be it was going to be a TV show, a series, but anyone can see when you saw that pilot, you saw the complexity of Heat. You can't confine those two powerhouse characters to the same screen. Can you imagine De Niro and Pacino on a small screen doing that Heat scene, that diner scene? You can't see that. It wouldn't work today, and it didn't work then. I've joked over and over with the young storytellers out there because occasionally they'll come up to me and ask my opinion. And I tell them they made amazing stories before you were born, and it's worth paying attention to these stories. It is what's written and what, more importantly, why it was written that way. Sure, you can look back on Thief and say it looks like the 80s, but I will argue it really doesn't feel like the 80s. Shot for shot, reshoot that whole story, and it will still give you the same tense feeling from the opening scene to the final scene. Sure, there is some offensive scenes, such as when Frank and his girl try to adopt a child and goes on a rant about adopting less desirable races and uses language that will offend most people today. But I say shut the fuck up, and just maybe if we slap the world a little bit more often these days, it might just be a better place instead of everybody finding everything offensive. When I see films today, it's sad to see very few storytellers taking risks. Instead, I'm watching crap where these storytellers are more focused on checking boxes. I'm fed up with all of that, and every story, big or small, for the cinema, for TV, for social, for your posts, should be written for characters, the environment, the art, the craft, not for society's sensitive bullshit. Do yourself a favor, watch Thief, and be amazed at that story and film. And go for a Michael Mann education and watch his films after Thief. Watch Manhunter, 1986, which was the very first introduction of Hannibal the Cannibal from Silence of the Lambs. And watch how Brian Cox actually does a very different version of Anthony Hopkins' version in Silence of the Lambs. That movie was based on the book Red Dragon. Then there's Last of the Mohicans, which was 1992. Then he brought us Heat with 1995. After that, it was Insider 1999. And then he did Ali 2001. Then Collateral in 2004. Miami Vice, the movie in 2006, which wasn't well received when it was in the cinema, but it's an amazing film of real, raw crime and how things are truly unfolding in that seedy world. After that film, he did Public Enemies, 2009. He did Black Hat, which I still think is an underrated film, 2015. And this year, he's releasing Ferrari. And it's going to be very interesting to see what he creates there. He has one more film to be made, which is Heat 2, which is currently in pre-production, where he will get, he'll take us on another journey of a younger version of the characters from the first film. And I honestly believe, because of his filmography and his age and what's going on, that could be his last film. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ferrari tells us about him, because it's been a while since we've seen a film from him, since 2015. And then obviously he's going to go right from Ferrari to Heat 2. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. He pushes one last time. I want him to push one last time and changes, like Michael Mann changes the filmmaking landscape. And he never checks any boxes, man. He doesn't apologize and he doesn't give a shit. His films test time. They're worth watching. That was Manny's Movies.